When you're creating a document, you oftentimes want to break it up a little bit. You want to strategize and maybe not have a single column in width. You may want to break that into multiple columns. And maybe within one of the columns, you may want to put some very specific information. So here we're going to create two columns. And I'm just simply going to select, there's my paragraph. Remember, always make sure you select what you want to change. And on the Layout tab, under Page Setup, you'll see Columns. And with the drop down arrow, there are a lot of presets that are available. There are 5 in total. You can have one, well, we already have one. You could have 2, and if I click on 2, you'll notice it breaks it into 2 separate columns. As I continue to add information, it will continue to move it to the next column. Now, it also requires that we put a break here. We'll talk about that in a moment. But right now, we can actually type in here and it will add it to the second column. So this is nice because it doesn't affect what's not selected. So what if I decided 2 columns is not enough? I'd rather have 3. Well, you click on 3 and now we have 3 columns. The ruler gives us a clear indication as to how much space is being occupied between these particular columns. Right now it's a 1/2 inch and you can basically see that. Now we can always modify that by dragging it in a little bit and making it smaller or larger. You have a lot of control over it. Or what we can do is kind of customize it a little bit. And I'm going to come down here to More Columns. Because in More Columns, see, we've chosen 3 and therefore we have 3 there in the background. But you can also have a line between them, and we have a little preview here. So when I put a line between them, you'll see a line appears between them. If I click OK, now I have a line between them as well. Magazines and newspapers often do this, but they use different approaches as well. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to turn that line off because I don't really need it. But I can actually decide, wait a minute, now I really only wanted 2. So I'll just click on 2 and it tells me how wide each one of these will be. It also tells me how much space is being used in the middle to separate them. Now I can change that amount. Maybe I want to take it up to 1 inch. So if I put 1 inch, it really restricts how much type I can put in there. So if I click OK, you notice now we have a whole inch in between. You can even see that on the ruler above. We have a whole inch there, but maybe that's too much, so we can come back in here for More Columns and we can modify that. Nope, just make this 0.5 because that's normally the default value. And if I press Tab to accept the value, you'll notice immediately it shows you 3 inches by 3 inches. If I change this, it will have to modify all of it. So if I change this to, let's say I want 3¼ or 3.2, then it changes the spacing between because you don't have that much space from one side of the page to the other. Now that depends again on your margins, but let's just say that we didn't have that. So I can change this to 3 inches. I'll press Tab and you notice it changes right back again. Now the reason it's changing both of them to the same size is because of this little check mark. This check mark says that when you change one, the other will be the same size, so they're equal. But if I take that off, I can now modify one without changing the second one. Okay? Well, the only reason it's changing right now is because of this spacing. But if I modify the spacing, of course, it should also change here as well. Again, you only have so much space between the right and the left side. But if I choose equal, then it will try to equalize the two of them. And it'll give me a spacing that is permitted. So right now, between the margins, I have approximately 6½ inches. 2 3s plus half, so that's 6½ inches between the margins. If I change the margins, of course, I'm going to have a little bit more space to play with. Now it also tells me I can apply this to different things. I can actually have the selected text, which we have chosen, or a whole section of the document, or the whole document. So I don't have to select anything. If I choose whole document, it will break the whole document into 2 separate, or 3, or 4, or 5. And by the way, the only thing preventing you from going bananas here and choosing 100 is because you wouldn't have enough space to put any content in. So right now I've split it up into 5 parts, and if I click OK, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. You don't have enough space to put anything. Even though we could change the margins in between, it's still not enough space to make sense out of the content that's there. So choosing columns is actually to your advantage. It allows you to split up your page or a section of your page the way you would like to see it. I'm just going to take it back to 3 again, and I'm going to make sure that this is once again 3 inches. Fantastic. Well, it's better if I change this to 3 inches. There we go. Well, that's not nice. Oh, it's 3. I thought it was 2. Sorry, my apologies. 2. Fantastic. So we can also start new columns as well. And in addition to this, there's something else we want to do. So I'm just going to set it for 2 columns. Click OK. There's my 2 columns. Now I want to make sure of one thing. And here where it says reach, I'm just going to put my insertion point in there. And I'm going to come up to layout and the drop down for break. When I use the drop down for break, there is one here for columns. What happens when I use this is it will put a break at the end where reach is, so that anything I type into that section will automatically be shifted to the second column. Otherwise, this one column could be kind of long, and it will try to balance the 2, but it can look a little odd. So what I'm going to do is simply at the end of this, I'm going to add the break, which is for the column. There we go. And just to prove it, you notice all of a sudden 1.6 billion has jumped to the other column. But I'm going to turn on, by going to the Home tab, Show and Hide. Just so I can see that there is a little break there. And you can see this break as a dotted line. And this dotted line is actually telling it that this is the end of this column. So as I type more information in here, fantastic. It will continue to add more content here, but it will not change anything else, such as the other side. However, this also gives me the ability to go to the other side. This is the other side. Fantastic. So the column break allows me to actually say this is the end of this column. Do not add any more information in this particular location. So hopefully this helps a little bit. And you'll also notice here at the very end of the columns, we have a section break. This section break, which is right here at the end of travel, tells the computer that the columns end at this point, and we go back to a single column. So this is very similar to having individual, let's say, backyards, where each one has a fence in between. What happens in one does not happen in the other. So you can change the formatting in both sides. Hopefully this helps a little bit for creating columns.